The 2-card combo of Lion's Eye Diamond and Echo of Aeons has been abused in Legacy for years.
True story.
But today, we're going to import this Legacy degeneracy into the modern format, using a brand new deck built around Echo of Aeons and everybody's favorite feline, Diamond Lion. A 2-mana 2/2 that has the ability to tap, sacrifice, and discard your hand to add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. We're going to abuse this interaction along with Modern's newest superstar, Orcish Bowmasters, to one-shot kill our opponents out of nowhere. This brew also has a synergistic supporting cast to help get your pieces into play, particularly Tyvar Jubilant Brawler, who serves double duty, giving your cat another chance at life, giving it haste, all while milling Echo of Aeons into your graveyard. And let's not forget Burning Inquiry, which triggers your Sheoldred and Bowmasters 3 times each, also assisting in dumping Echo into the graveyard so you can party. And if you like to party, I suggest you stick around because we're about to do just that in our first match. Alright, we're opening up our league on the play with an excellent 7-card hand with a ton of potential. On turn 1, I make the only play that I can and pass the turn, and my opponent reveals their intentions with a turn 1 Urza's Tower into an Expedition map. Right off the bat, we know that we're going to have to put pedal to the metal because turn 3 Tron is imminent. I draw into my Echo, which means finding the last part of our combo can result in a super fast kill. I attack for 1 and play out Wrenn and 6, trying to ensure double Bowmaster next turn. Passing back, my opponent plays out their mine, which guarantees a turn 3 Tron. But I'm going to stick to my plan and play out a land and simply pass back to avoid any possible removal on my Bowmasters. The map fetches power plant end of turn, and now Tron is assembled. Karn the Great Creator finds a Sundering Titan, and an Oblivion Stone rounds out their turn. It's now or never, so I flash in Double Trouble end of turn, targeting them with both of the triggers. Untap. Drew into a Fable. Okay, we need to Tyvar and hit a Diamond Lion. I'm going to start with a land and a fetch, shock in a Watery Grave. Green, black, red, Tyvar, minus, and we hit it. Wow. But we have to get rid of the Karn to be able to activate our Diamond Lion. So let's swing into Karn for 3 and attack them for 2, putting them down to 15. Let's -1 Wrenn and 6, putting them to 14. And now let's party. Crack the Lion, flashback the Echo, 14 Bowmaster triggers on the stack with my opponent at 14 life, which means an incredibly satisfying victory game 1. Let's move on to game 2. Game 2, opening 7 looks great, we'll keep it. Opponent's on a mulligan to 5. Urza's Mine, Expedition map. Drew into a Stomping Ground, we'll lead on our Copperline Gorge into a Ragavan. Second Urza's Mine, excellent for us, and we untap. Draw into a Verdant Catacombs, start with an attack, crack for 2, exile a Warping Whale, can't cast it, play out a Verdant Catacombs, pass the turn. Crack their map, end of turn, reveal a Power Plant. Untap, Power Plant into play. Chromatic Star, we're going to respond to that with a Bowmaster. Get our basic swamp here. Bowmaster enters play, triggers, targets them. Draw a card off the star, Bowmaster triggers, targets them. They're down to 16. Relic of Progenitus, nothing else, we untap. Drew into a Blood Crypt. I think we're going to start with a Burning Inquiry. Bowmaster triggers 3 times, we'll target them with all 3. It's going to be an attack for 8, we'll put our opponent down to 5. Ragavan's going to trigger. Exile an Ulamog, I don't think we can cast that one. Shock in a Blood Crypt, and we're going to play out a Fable. Trigger the Fable, back to my opponent's turn. Crack the Relic end of turn, trigger the Bowmaster, they're down to 4. Opponent has not found Tron, 4 mana into a 1 ring, they'll draw a card. Untap, drew into a Beseiju, actually a pretty good draw here. Beseiju in combination with Wrenn and 6 ensures that our opponent won't be hitting Tron anytime soon. 3 mana, Beseiju, get rid of a power plant, and then we'll return the Beseiju. Opponent's going to take 1, down to 3, we'll Beseiju the other power plant. 4 mana, another ring. They draw a card, 2 Bowmaster triggers. Our Orc army grows larger. Another power plant, Chromatic Sphere, nothing else. Draw into a Tyvar, we're going to flip our Fable. Attack with our Goblin Shaman, trigger. No damage gets through, we'll return our Beseiju, and we'll pass the turn back. Opponent's going to go down to 1 off the ring. Draw step, we'll knock down the power plant. Opponent scoops, got there. And while we were firing on all cylinders in round 1, our second matchup was a much tougher battle. Opponent leads on Inspiring Vantage into a Monastery Swiftspear, looking like burn. We'll take a hit for 1. Drew into a Lightning Bolt, really good. We'll play out our Bloodstained Mire. We're going to fetch a basic right now and bolt down the Swiftspear. Back to our opponent's turn. A second Swiftspear, looking like they're stalling on lands. We'll take a hit for 1, going down to 17. Drew into a second Fable. We'll play out our basic Swamp. Not representing anything here, pass the turn. My opponent finds their second land, Sunbaked Canyon. Lava Spike, puts me down to 14, into a Skewer the Critics down to 11. They attack for 3 before damage, flash in our Bowmasters, ping them for 1, and we have a chump blocker at the ready. Block the Swift Spear, and back to us. Turn 3 while untapped. We drew another basic. Really basic forest into our Fable, and we're just going to pass the turn from here. Opponent with another Sunbaked Canyon, drawn 2 lands in a row. Roiling Vortex. It's going to trigger the Swift Spear. Opponent attacks for 2. We're going to block with the Bowmaster, and our opponent suspends a Rift Bolt. We're going to go down to 10 life. Drew an Echo of Aeon. We will utilize the Fable's ability, discarding an Echo and a land. We drew into a Burning Inquiry, kind of wishing we still had our Bowmasters at this point. We'll start with an attack for 2, make a treasure. Opponent goes down to 14. I think we're going to preserve our life total. I'm going to play out the Beseiju, Diamond Lion, and a second Fable. We'll pass the turn back. Rift Bolt off of Suspend. They'll take 5 off of the Vortex because they did not spend any mana. We'll take 3 going down to 7. Opponent with a Goblin Guide, 2 attackers. Goblin Guide reveals a Bowmaster off the top, which I believe will be game. We'll double block their creature. Untap, we'll take 1 off the Vortex. Draw into a Bowmaster, transform our first Fable, and we'll utilize the second Fable to draw 2 more. Move to combat, swing for 2. Opponent goes down to 6. Copperline Gorge, Bowmaster. Opponent goes down to 5. And now the way we lose here is if my opponent has a burn spell to kill the Bowmaster, but I think we have to go for it here. Flash back the Echo, and we win the game. All right. With my opponent being on the play game 2 and having a 7-card hand chock full of burn spells, we couldn't get out of the gates fast enough to contest. But game 3 proved to be an extremely close affair that went down to the wire. We'll be on the play. Opening 7 looks good, we'll keep it. Start Basic Forest into a Halfling. Pass the turn. Opponent Scalding Tarn fetch, Basic Mountain, Goblin Guide, attack. They reveal a bolt off the top. One tap. We are going to shock in this Stomping Ground. Play out our Fable, trigger the Fable, pass the turn. A second Goblin Guide from our opponent, attacks. Diamond Lion on the top. We are going to block one of the Goblin Guides, preserve our life total. We'll go down to 14. Opponent does have a second land, skewers us down to 11. Draw into a Diamond Lion. We will draw 2, discard 2. We're going to get rid of the Renin 6 and the Terminate. Drew into a Tyvar and another Lightning Bolt. Cast out our Diamond Lion. Overgrown Tomb tapped. We'll pass the turn back. Opponent's going to lead with an attack on their turn. Goblin Guide triggers. Echo of Aeon's on the top. For that reason, we're not going to block. And we'll bolt down the guide. Scalding Tarn, Lava Spike. We're down to 8 life. Skewer the Critics. We're down to 5 life. Draw into our Echo. Flip our Kiki Jiki. Cast Tyvar. Minus Tyvar. And we have no creatures in our graveyard. I think we're likely dead here. We're just going to attack with the Lion. Pass the turn back. Opponent Sacred Foundry. Shock. And a Bolt. We're down to 2 life. They untap. Draw a card off the Canyon. Arid Mesa. Fetch. Basic Mountain. Monastery Swift Spear. Path to Exile targeting our Reflection, or respond by bolting down the Swift Spear. We'll put a basic Swamp into play. Untap, drew into another Fable. So we need to dodge one more draw step here. Start with an attack for 3. Tyvar, untap the Halfling, play out the Fable. Alright, need to get lucky. Trigger Goblin Shaman token, pass the turn. Dodge a spell. Our opponent with a Rift Bolt, and they beat us. Our next 2 matches were against 4-color Omnath, a matchup you'd expect our deck to lose to. But despite your pessimism, we were able to achieve victory in both matches. I want to feature 2 games in particular to showcase just how resilient and powerful our deck can be. Opening 7 looks good, we'll keep it. Gonna leave with Watery Grave tapped, pass the turn. One with a Triome tapped, back to us. Drew into a Fable, pretty good. Blackleaf Cliffs, we'll just pass the turn. Temple Garden, shock, Renin 6, plus the Renin 6, no land in the graveyard. We'll flash in our Bowmaster end of turn, trigger, hit the Renin 6. In this instance, I wanted to make my opponent choose between keeping the Renin 6 and killing my Bowmasters, knowing that I had Tyvar to recur the Bowmasters if needed. Renin 6 minus hits our Bowmaster. Beseiju as the 3rd land. 3 mana Prismatic Ending hits our Fable, and back to us. Drew another Fable. We'll start with an attack, crack for 3, another Fable, trigger, Halfling, Steam Vents tapped. Opponent Breeding Pool shock. 1 mana Prismatic Ending, exile one of our Goblin Shamans, 3 mana Fable of their own. We untap, draw into a Bowmaster is pretty good. I think we're going to discard our Diamond Lion. We drew into a Burning Inquiry. Start with Tyvar. We're going to minus Tyvar. We're going to bring back Bowmasters, trigger, target the Shaman, cast a second Bowmasters, trigger, target again, swing for 5. Opponent goes down to 8. Then we're going to Inquiry, put our opponent down to 2. and our opponent scoops. Got there. Opening 7 looks great, we'll keep it. We'll start off with our Wooded Foothills, we'll fetch, shocking our Stomping Ground into a halfling. That's the turn. Opponent with a Windswept Heath, they fetch. Sacred Foundry, shock, and a Prismatic Ending. Through into a Lightning Bolt, we'll play out our basic Swamp, play out our second halfling. It's your go. Foundry, another Ending, there goes our halfling. Breeding Pool comes into play untapped, and a halfling of their own. Back to us, we drew a Wrenn 6, which is unfortunately a card we can't play. Bolt down their halfling, and back to them. Misty Rainforest, fetch, basic island, likely a Teferi, and there it is. Minus on the Teferi, they draw a card. We're into an Echo of Aeons, and at this point I think we're priced into casting this Burning Inquiry. Okay, unfortunately our Wrenn 6 goes to the graveyard. Drew our third land, going to fetch, get ourselves a Steam Vents, we'll shock, and we're going to Inquiry again. Echo is now in the graveyard, still have a Tyvar in hand. 2 mana, opponent with a Wrenn 6, they plus, return a land, play out a Windswept Heath, plus their Teferi, and back our way. We drew into a Bowmasters, which is really good. We'll play out our Verdant Catacombs, but I think we're going to get Tyvar, and then we're going to Echo. My opponent fetches in response to the Tyvar activation. Basic Plains, 2 mana, Leyline Binding, and they eat my Tyvar. Still mill 3, still bring back the Diamond Lion. Pass back to my opponent. Opponent with 4 mana into a 1-ring. They draw a card, uptick Wrenn 6, uptick Teferi. Misty Rainforest, we'll fetch end of turn. We'll put our Overgrown Tomb into play tapped. Untap, draw for turn, drew Burning Inquiry, not bad. Start with the Bowmaster. It's going to trigger, target the Wrenn 6. Cast the Echo. Alright, 7 triggers. Okay, all these triggers will get rid of my opponent's Planeswalkers. We do have a land drop for turn, we'll make that. Cast out a Ragavan. Back to my opponent. They fetch, get a Triome end of turn. Untap, they're going to take 1 off the ring. 3 mana, they're flashing in a Teferi. We're going to respond to this. Get a Blood Crypt, we'll shock. Second Bowmaster, trigger, we'll 1 them. Teferi enters play. They're going to draw. We're going to 2 them and 2 Teferi. Opponent casts a Fury, discarding an Omnath. Getting rid of Ragavan and 2 Bowmasters. Delighted Halfling, uptick the Teferi, and we drew into a Burning Inquiry. We're going to start by bolting the Halfling, and my opponent scoops. With a 3-1 record heading into our final match, I'm feeling great about this deck and its chances to finish with an 80% win rate. Let's party. Opponent's on a mulligan to 5. We'll kick things off, Copperline Gorge, and pass the turn. Polluted Delta, they fetch. Blood Crypt, shock. Grief, exiling a Fatal Push. Let's see if they stack their triggers correctly. They do. Imagine they'll be taking a Lightning Bolt here. Lightning Bolt down. There's the Feigned Death. Grief is back. I imagine Diamond Lion will be going to the graveyard. And there it goes. Our turn. Drew into a Wrenn 6. Doesn't do much for us right now, so we're just going to play out our Steam Vents tapped, and we'll pass the turn. Polluted Delta, fetch for our opponent. Basic Swamp into a Dauthi Voidwalker. Pretty good 5-card hand. Going down to 16. Drew into a Bowmaster is probably one of our best draws at this point. We'll play out our basic Swamp, pass the turn. Opponent with an attack for 7, puts us down to 9, and we're actually just going to hold here. We'll untap. Drew into a Stomping Ground. Let's start with the Bowmaster. Triggers, target the Voidwalker. Play out a Wrenn 6. Need to dodge another Undying spell here. Minus Wrenn 6, hit the Voidwalker. Alright, we dodged it. Going back the other way. Opponent attacks for 4. We're going to go down to 5 life here. Untap. Drew into a Ragavan. We're going to dash in the Ragavan. Attack for 2. Card off the top. We get our own Grief, but unfortunately we can't cast it because of the way I tap my mana. Stomping Ground tapped. Wrenn 6 -1. And we'll pass the turn back. Opponent leads off on an attack. I'm not going to block. I think the way I win this game is with Echo and Bowmasters. So if they burn me out, they burn me out. We go down to 1. And there's the Bolt. Down a game. Game 2 on the play. Opening 7's a little bit weak. I think we have to mulligan this. I like our 6 much better. We'll keep that. And we'll ship a Bloodstained Mire. Lead Wooded Foothills, we'll fetch. Basic Forest into a Halfling. Opponent with the Blackleaf Cliffs. A Fury. Looks like we're getting scammed. Halfling down. Fury back. Untap, draw, drew into a Fable, play out our Blackleaf Cliffs, and pass the turn. Opponent shocks in a Blood Crypt. They are representing a Bowmaster. I do think we need to block here though, so we'll flash in our Bowmaster. We'll 1 them. Jump block. Here comes a Bowmaster. It's going to kill ours. Untap. Drew into a Tyvar. Actually really good here. We'll fetch. Shock in a Watery Grave. Tyvar. Minus. And we're going to return Bowmasters to play, killing their Bowmaster. This is Modern, folks. Pass turn back. Polluted Delta. Attacking with both the creatures, we are going to block the Fury. Tyvar dies. Back to us. Drew a land. We're going to lead with the Fable. Triggers. Copperline Gorge. Pass the turn. Opponent fetches, basic swamp. Feels like another Bowmaster. It's actually a fatal push. They hit our Fable down. We are not going to chump block with this Bowmaster. This is our way to win the game, so we'll just attack, nothing else. Opponent attacks for 9. We're going to go down to 7 life here. We're going to use Fable's ability, discard Echo, and a Verdant Catacombs. Bolt our opponent, and Echo. And they bolt us in response. Very strange that they didn't hit our Bowmaster here, unless they have another removal spell. And they feign death, targeting their Fury. Alright, Bowmaster triggers. 1 on their Orc, and the rest on them. Play out our Blood Crypt. Tapped, pass turn back. Fatal push targeting our Orc army. Now if they have a removal spell for this Bowmaster, we will lose. And there it is. It's game over. End of our league, unfortunate. So as per usual, Scam is the party pooper and keeps us from the 4-1 record. Thank you for tuning in today. I will see you all again very soon. You know the deal, everybody. Be well.